Welcome to the LeClaire Tenant Selection Plan live stream meeting. I'm Jessica Civils, Senior Director of Public Engagement here at the Chicago Housing Authority, and I will be your moderator for today. Today, you'll hear a presentation from the Habitat Development Team, Davis, David Mavis and Jason Woodard, and also from our development team, Corey Sheen. The 30-day public comment period began July 2nd through August 1st of this year. While CHA encourages and welcomes all program participants, residents, and community at large to review the proposed updates to the LeClaire tenant selection plan and lease, you are not required to attend the actual meeting. Note your presence or absence will not affect your housing. CHA will host two public hearing meetings, one live stream, which is today, and then one in person coming up on July 15th, 2024 at 6 p.m. at the LeClaire Courts, Harvest Park, 5120 West 44th Street in Chicago. We ask that all comments pertaining to the LeClaire Phase 1 be submitted electronically to comment to the plan at thecha.org prior to the comment hearing, which is today, or submitted in the chat during our live stream, which is what we're reviewing now. All comments will be added to the comment grid and receive a response during the live stream, or if we're not able to answer your question live, we will follow up with you. Now I'm going to turn it over to our development team, Corey.
Hi, I'm Corey Shen. I'm with the development team, development manager assigned to this project for CHA. LeClaire Courts is going to be a dynamic multi-phase project that's going to bring 700 units to the Garfield Ridge community. With me today is the lead developer for the first phase of this project, the Habitat Company. Dave is going to be representing the development arm of the Habitat Company. And then we have Jason, who is going to be representing the property management arm of the Habitat Company. And I want to turn it over to Dave.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate the introduction. My name is Dave Mavis, and I am one of the vice presidents of community development at the Habitat Company, responsible primarily for the redevelopment of the LeClaire Courts site. Habitat Company is a 50-year-old company in Chicago with an extensive track record of developing and managing affordable housing, public housing, and market rate housing. And we're very excited to have been selected along with our joint venture partner, Cabrera Capital Partners, as the developer for the LeClaire Courts site. As Corey mentioned, it's dynamic and very exciting. The whole site is over 30 acres, and it's a lot of residential housing, approximately 700 units over the next several years. This first phase is a large and a big start. It's two 6-story buildings containing a total of 183 apartment units. And those are a mix of studio apartments, 1-bedroom apartments, 2 bedrooms, and a handful of 3-bedroom apartments. As the development continues west across the redevelopment site, we will move into lower density development where the buildings are not as tall and have some larger units for families that are set back from Cicero Avenue. These two buildings are located between 44th and 45th Street on Cicero Avenue. Why don't we go ahead and go to the next slide at this time, and I think some of this will become more evident. So these are basically elevations. They're architectural renderings of what the completed buildings will look like. And so they may vary a little bit from this, but this is what we're working with, and we think they're very attractive buildings and hope that you will as well. Next slide. So here If you look to the left, that is what the site looks like now. That is where LeClaire Courts used to be, and those buildings have been raised, and it is vacant land at this time. Part of the process will be to realign the streets with the grid in typical kind of Chicago fashion, so that looping street will be removed and replaced with rectangular grid street pattern. You can see on the right the shaded kind of, I don't know whether to call that bright orange or sub area A. That is the residential, the first phase of residential. And then, so that road there you see is Cicero Avenue. 45th Street is on the left, and 44th is on the right of that sub area A. You can kind of see through the shading. There's the two mid-rise buildings there that we're talking about today. And then set back behind that is some of the lower density housing that will be developed in future phases. You can kind of make out that there aren't really any 6 stories. Those are mostly 3-story buildings, and actually along the borders, you'll even see some townhouse style units, which will be very suitable for families. Again, that is all very preliminary, just in the planning stage. And then in the upper right corner of that slide where it says sub area A phase 1, that is a commercial redevelopment area. That is something that we're also very excited about. Our joint venture partner, Cabrera Capital Partners, is the lead developer on that piece of the redevelopment. Excuse me. And what you can see depicted there is still a work in progress and still evolving, but we do know a couple things that the site will include. One is a full-service grocery store, which is the kind of big rectangular building pictured at the back of that lighter red shaded area. And then the building kind of in the foreground of that commercial area is anticipated to be healthcare services, a federally qualified healthcare center. The building probably will not actually be located in that corner as was once envisioned. These things do evolve, and it's probably going to be moved back sort of next to the grocery store to create space along Cicero for more traditional retail businesses where folks might drive in and pick up a sandwich or a cup of coffee or make a deposit or something like that. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, this is what we call a site plan for Site A, the residential site. So this is oriented kind of the opposite of the last slide you were looking at. At the top is Cicero Avenue, so the top is actually east rather than north, which is a lot of times what you will see on a map. So north is to the left, that's 44th Street, and to the right is 45th Street. The larger building, we are, for development purposes, this is not the name of the building, but we call it A North. You know, the north building and the south building, and A, it's Site A. So it's a large L-shaped building. It has 110 residential units in it, and it also contains a very large early childhood center on the first floor that is over 14,000 square feet and really makes up most of the first floor of that building. So that is going to be a wonderful amenity for the entire LeClaire Courts area, starting with these 2 buildings. And then the building on the right is somewhat smaller, still 6 stories, but 73 units. That's called our south building. There is a small area at the very far right, the south end of that building, that is targeted for retail. We don't have a user identified for that yet. Each building will have its own amenities in terms of lobby areas, tenant resident lounge, fitness centers, and extensive areas for management as well as resident services, one-on-one assessments and meetings and so forth, bike storage, et cetera. And then in between the two, there's really a nice kind of walkway and park that will continue through the site. So heading down off the page, we're heading west at that point, and that will continue through that low density. So there's a nice kind of a midway, if you will, for people to congregate and play and walk. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And this will be just a high-level distribution of the units. So again, there's 183, which is 110 in one building and 73 in the other. Of those 183, half of them, or 91 units, will be allocated to the Chicago Housing Authority for RAD units under the PBV rent subsidy. 74 of those units, which is 40% of the total, will also be affordable housing units, but they won't have a rent subsidy associated with them. Those units are sometimes referred to as tax credit affordable units or LIHTC affordable units. And then 10% of the property, 18 out of the 183 units, will be fully unrestricted market rate units available to the general population without regard to income. Next slide. And that concludes my portion of the presentation, which is really just kind of the general high-level overview of what we're doing here. And at this point, I will hand it over to my colleague, Jason Woodard, who is leading up this piece of the project from the property management side. Jason?
Yes, thanks, Dave. I'm Jason Woodard. I'm the compliance manager for the Habitat Company, and we'll also be talking about the tenant selection plan for LeClaire Courts. So this is going to be how we select residents based on income levels and other requirements of the affordable programs there. So the first slide here is about those CHA RAD units. So RAD is rental assistance demonstration, and those are the units that are going to be supported by the CHA in regards to being subsidized. So the rents will be based on income levels. And the first priority for the waiting list is going to be those right to return households. So those households that have previously been at other CHA properties and that want to go to a new CHA property. And actually the waiting list will be in that order, so it will start with the right to return households. Those will be reviewed, and any that are approved will be housed, and then we will move next to the site-based waiting list. Next slide, please. So for all of the affordable units, there's going to be income limits, but there's both maximum and minimum income requirements for LeClaire Courts. So the maximum would be for those affordable units, the maximum income to which you can go. All of the units are going to be tax credit. Now, David mentioned the LIHTC, that stands for Low Income Housing Tax Credits. And so all of the affordable units are going to be tax credit, and there's going to be a maximum income to which you can have in order to move in. AMI refers to the area median income. So take the area median income and whatever percentage of that, which it notes here between 30 and 80%, you would be qualified then to move in. Now there's also going to be a minimum income requirement. That requirement is specific to the CHA, but also is going to be applicable to the tax credit units as well. So the minimum income is 2.5 times the monthly rent amount. For the CHA units, again, they'll be subsidized, so the actual rent itself will be limited to 30% of your adjusted monthly income. If that is below $75, then there will be a minimum $75. Next slide, please. So prior to move-in, each household for the CHA RAD units will be required to put up 1 month's rent as a security deposit. That is a CHA requirement. They will not be charged an application fee, though. For the non-CHA RAD units, so the tax credit only units, they will be required to pay a administration fee not to exceed $250. Next slide, please. All units will have a credit check. So all household members 18 and older will have a credit check, and we will review based on the requirements shown here. For example, no delinquency in excess of $1,000 within the past 2 years. It does note there that mitigating circumstances apply, so this would be if it was medical debt, if it was student debt. It's delineated specifically in the tenant selection plan. Next slide, please. In addition, if there is an unsatisfactory history of meeting financial obligations, so if you are behind on 5 or more accounts, that could also be a rejecting factor. It depends, again, though, on mitigating circumstances and how those are documented by the applicant household. And there's a list here at the bottom of several mitigating circumstances. Next slide, please. Any applicants who owe funds for utilities that are germane to LeClaire courts, such as electric, gas, etc., will be denied, but they will be allowed to cure those potential concerns. So if they owe money for electric, they would pay it off and then be an applicant in good standing. Next slide, please. Bankruptcies will be considered as well. Any bankruptcy filing within the last 3 years must be discharged with no new negative credit. But again, there will be mitigating circumstances, primarily medical, student debt. Next slide, please. Residential history will be taken into account. So landlord history will be verified by the management company, and if there are any evictions within the last 3 years, those are again subject to rejection based on any mitigating circumstances. There will be no home visits, but again, landlord verifications are required. Next slide, please. Student eligibility rules apply. So the tax credit program has a student rule where basically they are looking to ensure that the communities, the properties that are tax credit are not dormitories. So there is a student eligibility rule to allow those who are not seeking a dormitory to have access. So you must meet the requirements for that. Furthermore, for the RAD units, there is the capacity to have childcare expenses deducted from your income and thus lower your rent. Next slide, please. Now, there will be an employment requirement for applicant households. And this is a CHA requirement. So you can see there the RAD units There is a 20-hour requirement there. Specific to LeClaire courts, it will be 30 hours with some exemptions. Similarly, the tax credit only units will also have a 30-hour requirement. Market units will be required for at least 2.5 times monthly rental amount of income. Now, with all of the employment requirements, there are exemptions. The primary ones are disability and elderly households, so 62 or older. Next slide, please. Criminal history will be checked also. Per the Just Housing Ordinance in Cook County, there's a 3-year look-back period. So any criminal convictions within the past 3 years will be reviewed by the management company, so in this case the Habitat company, to determine whether or not we can have folks move in or not. So that the 3-year look back automatically triggers this review. If there is no criminal convictions within the past 3 years, then the criminal check passes. Next slide, please. LeClaire courts will be smoke-free housing, so smoking will be prohibited in all indoor areas and only allowed 25 feet from building entrances. This will be a part of the house rules at LeClaire courts. Next slide, please. The pet policy, because this is a mixed income property, is a little bit different from the CHAs. Pets must be licensed in accordance with the City of Chicago. They must be housebroken. There's a maximum of 2 pets. They must be registered and updated annually. And there is a $200 pet fee. But there will be some other details and restrictions, so you would need to see the full text to review. But it's rodents, snakes, dangerous animals are prohibited, so it's primarily domesticated animals. Next slide. I believe that concludes the presentation. I'll hand it back over.
Thank you. So now let's see if we have any questions from the live chat. We do have a question. Go ahead.
Hello. Earlier in the presentation slide, someone asked if LeClaire would be a mixed income development.
Yes, LeClaire Courts will be a mixed income development. As mentioned, 50% of the units, or 91 units out of the 183, will be for CHA households. 40% will be, another 40%, so that brings us to 90 total, will be income restricted between 30 and 80% of area median income per the tax credit rules. And then a final 10%, 18 units are fully market rate with no restrictions on income.
Any other questions? Okay. I would like to thank everyone for listening to our presentation today. Again, we ask that if you have any comments pertaining to LeClaire Phase 1, they can be submitted to comment on the plan at thecha.org. Also, this information will be on our website as well at thecha.org. And we look forward to seeing you if you plan to attend our next meeting that's live in person on July 15th. Have a good day.